Good morning on this rainy Monday morning. We will be in Hebrews 11 right after this. Hey, we want to welcome you back on this Monday to Plugged In. It is Election Eve. I guess we could call it that. If you haven't already done so, this is a couple of my public service announcements. If you've not already voted, please do so. Do not think, well, my vote's not going to matter. It will. Please go vote tomorrow. And we look forward to seeing what's going to happen. We're anxious, I know, but let's do our part by voting. The other thing is, next Monday is Veterans Day. I'm going to say this off the fly. I'm not for sure, but I'm assuming, Peter, we probably won't meet next week because it's Veterans Day. I think we have the studio shut down, so we will not meet next week. But I want to take the moment to remind you that it's Veterans Day, and please take some time to thank a veteran, living especially, but we recognize those who have already passed on. But this is to recognize those who are alive. So just thank a veteran, and let's remember that the freedom we have is because of the sacrifice that they made. All right, so we're going to open up with Hebrews 11:11. Okay, it's going to be on your screen. The first part of it says, by faith Abraham, even though he was past age. And then you see the rest of it here. And Sarah herself was barren, was unable to become a father because he considered him faithful who had made the promise. Abraham was of an old age, but he knew that God was faithful in what he had promised, so this was going to happen. You know what? Nothing probably drives us more crazy than to have to wait. There's nothing, I don't think, that is harder in life for us to do than to wait. It might be that we're waiting for something good, like Christmas morning, unwrapping of gifts. We could be waiting for something bad, like the news from a doctor about some recent tests. Although those aren't always bad, we just sometimes jump to conclusions, but maybe the doctor indicated that they were not going to be good test results. And so we're just anxious about what that is. There is also that waiting period for what is the unknown. And we find ourselves really on that edge right now because the election could go any which way as far as who will be the next president. It really doesn't matter the situation, good, bad, or unknown. Waiting stinks. And waiting on God is especially hard because then we realize we're not in control. And that's not the way we like it. The Hebrew writer tells us that Abraham was past age of having kids. In fact, if you were to sneak into verse 12, it says that Abraham was good as dead. He was getting up in years. And his wife had her own issues. She had been barren. She was unable to have children. And she herself was no spring chicken. So Sarah decided to take matters into her own hands. Now, this might be a good time to remind you that these heroes of faith were only human. While their names are listed in this chapter of displaying faith in God, they each had their weaknesses. Noah got drunk. Abraham lied. Gideon tested God. David committed adultery. Even though one might have a life overall of faith, there can be those times when we venture off track. And such was the case for Abraham and Sarah. And we find that played out in Genesis 16. I want to read for you, it won't be on your screen, but I want to read for you the first 4 verses of Genesis 16 as you see the narrative and how Abraham himself even tripped up. Here's what is said. Now Sarai, because at that time her name was Sarai, he was Abram, their name would be changed to Abraham and Sarah. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children. But she had an Egyptian maidservant named Hagar, so she said to Abram, "The Lord has kept us from having children. Go, sleep with my maidservant. Perhaps I can build a family through her." Abram agreed to what Sarah said. Again, why is he doing that? I'm going to explain in just a moment. So after Abram had been living in Canaan for 10 years, Sarah, his wife, took her Egyptian maidservant, Hagar, and gave her to her husband to be his wife. He slept with Hagar, and she conceived. Now, before we get completely worked up over this scene in their life, let's put some of the puzzle pieces together. Sarah had given Hagar to Abraham as a substitute wife, which was a common practice of that time. A married woman who could not have children was shamed by her peers and was often required to give a female servant to her husband in order to produce heirs. The children born to the servant woman were considered the children of the wife. Abraham was acting in line with the custom of that day, but his actions showed a lack of faith that God would fulfill what he had promised. Now, as it would turn out, Sarah became very jealous and was upset that the maidservant was pregnant. A fact that still puzzles me to this day since she was the one that instigated the idea. But part of that might have been that Hagar flaunted her pregnancy. What we do know is that she eventually gave birth to a son, and he was named Ishmael, and God would bless Ishmael. God also would keep his promise to Abraham. I want you to note that. Even though Abraham and Sarah did something outside of the will of God, God did not take away the promise. 14 years later, at the age of 100, Abraham became a father. That son given to him was named Isaac, and we will be talking about him in days to come. For now, here are some things to think about. Be patient. Do not worry. Do not fret. Do not try and play God, and do not try to get ahead of God. He will always keep his promise. What we need to do is just wait on him. Thank you again for joining us each week for Plugged In. Like this, share it. Have a wonderful day, and God bless.